Excel tutorial, Dispersion Measures. Descriptive statistics consist of quantitative or qualitative data, population or sample frequency distribution, central tendency measures, dispersion measures, association measures, and frequency distribution shape. This topic is part of Business Statistics with Excel course. Feel free to take a look at course curriculum by clicking link at description box below. This tutorial has an educational and informational purpose and doesn't constitute any type of forecasting, business, trading, or investment advice. Please read full tutorial disclaimer at the end of this video. Dispersion measures consist of data population or sample variability. Main dispersion measures are standard deviation, variance, and average deviation or mean absolute deviation. Standard deviation consists of square root of average data population or sample square dispersion. As a formula, to the left we have the population standard deviation with the Greek letter sigma, which is equal to the square root of 1 divided by n, and is the number of observations within the population multiplied by the sum from the first to the last of the differences between the data within the population minus its arithmetic mean with the Greek letter mu, and that result to the power of 2. To the right we have the sample standard deviation, which is equal to the square root of 1 divided by the number of observations within the sample multiplied by the sum from the first to the last of the differences between the data within the sample minus its arithmetic mean, and that result to the power of 2. Variance consists of average data population or sample square dispersion. As a formula, to the left we have the population variance with sigma squared, which is equal to 1 divided by the number of observations within the population multiplied by the sum from the first to the last of the differences between the data within the population minus its arithmetic mean, and that result to the power of 2. To the right we have the sample variance, which is equal to 1 divided by the number of observations within the sample multiplied by the sum from the first to the last of the difference between the data within the sample minus its arithmetic mean, and that result to the power of 2. Mean absolute deviation or average deviation consists of average data population or sample absolute dispersion. As a formula, to the left we have the population average deviation, which is equal to 1 divided by the number of observations within the population multiplied by the sum from the first to the last of the absolute value of the differences between the data within the population minus its arithmetic mean. And to the right we have the sample average deviation, which is equal to 1 divided by the number of observations within the sample multiplied by the sum from the first to the last of the absolute value of the differences between the data within the sample minus its arithmetic mean. Great. So let's go into the Excel file so that we can study dispersion measures with greater detail. Perfect. So here we are within Dispersion Measures Excel file. And within this video tutorial, we'll be working within Dispersion Measures orange colored worksheet. So first we begin with the data for the tutorial, which is found at columns B and at column C. At column B, we have dates, as we can see, dates with the daily frequency, and they go from the beginning of 2007, and if we select B4 and press Ctrl down arrow on the keyboard, we see that it goes all the way into the end of 2015, therefore 9 years of data. So again, we press now Ctrl up arrow, down arrow 2 times to go into the beginning of the column. And then with the green color background, column C, we have SPY. SPY corresponds to the ETF investment vehicle, which intends to replicate the Standard & Poor's 500 index. And here we have SPY adjusted close prices because they were adjusted for dividends and splits. So the following step is at column D, we are going to calculate these SPY adjusted close prices daily arithmetic returns. As we can see, the title of the column are SPY. So the first calculation we see here is at D4, which has an orange color background to differentiate it with the rest of the column. As we can see within the formula bar, it is just a 0%. That 0% was only included for educational purposes as an example, therefore it is not fixed and it can be modified according to your needs. The reason we have this 0% is because we need at least 2 prices for the calculation of the first arithmetic return, which is the one we find right here at D5. As we see within the formula bar, it is equal to C5, which is current day price, divided by C4, which is previous day's price, and that result minus 1. If we select D6, we see that it's equal to C6, which is current day price, divided by C5, previous day's price, and that result minus 1, and so on for the rest of the column. If we double click on the bottom right hand corner square, we can copy the formula all the way down for the rest of the column. So now that we have the data ready, we are going to calculate dispersion measures for those daily arithmetic returns, as we can see here within the description at F3. So we are going to calculate sample standard deviation, sample variance, and sample mean absolute deviation. So as we can see here, first we select G3, and we're calculating the sample standard deviation of those daily arithmetic returns, and within the formula bar we see the stdeb.s, that's the sample standard deviation built-in Excel function, and we see that it goes from D4 to D2269. So just double checking, we select D4 where we have the first daily arithmetic return, and we press Ctrl down arrow to go into the end of the column within the keyboard. We see that it goes all the way into D2269, that's the end of the column. So again, we press Ctrl up arrow, down arrow to go into the beginning of the column, and going back into G3 by selecting it, we see again stdeb.s sample standard deviation of that corresponding column with the daily arithmetic returns from D4 to D2269. So then we calculate the sample variance. This is found at H3, and it is equal to, and within the formula bar, we see var.s, that's sample variance built-in Excel function, also from D4 to D2269. And last, we have the calculation at I3 of the sample mean absolute deviation. So we select it, and we see within the formula bar that we have equals to. First, we have the built-in Excel function of average, and as you might remember from the formula within the slides, within it we have, as we open parentheses, ABS, which is the built-in Excel function for the absolute value, and those were the differences between the daily arithmetic returns, so from D4 to D2269, so the full column of those daily arithmetic returns, minus their arithmetic mean, calculated with the built-in Excel function of average, also from D4 to D2269. But an important observation here is that this calculation of the arithmetic mean needs to be fixed. So it's fixed for the full column. So we are calculating those differences for each of the daily arithmetic returns minus the arithmetic mean for the full column. So for fixing this, as we can see here within the formula bar, the corresponding column and the corresponding row, both of this, the beginning and at the end, they have dollar signs before them. That fixes the corresponding calculation. And this is done by pressing F4 on the keyboard or adding the dollar signs manually, so as mentioned previously, so that the corresponding average remains fixed for the corresponding calculation on the full column. And another important observation here is that within this formula bar, we have the calculation being done as an array. So we see the curly brackets at the beginning and at the end of the formula bar. The reason we need an array is because we have multiple calculations, as we can see here, calculations within the single cell, so this needs to be done through an Excel array. And to calculate this array, once we input the formula, instead of pressing Enter on the keyboard, we need to press Ctrl-Shift-Enter. And to double check that the array is working correctly, we see the corresponding curly brackets at the beginning and at the end of the formula bar. Perfect. So now that we finished studying dispersion measures through sample standard deviation, sample variance, and sample mean absolute deviation, we can go back into the slides. And as mentioned previously, this tutorial has an educational and informational purpose and doesn't constitute any type of forecasting, business, trading, or investment advice. Please pause the video now so you can read the full tutorial disclaimer. Okay, so with this, we finished this tutorial. Thank you for watching.